Okay, 14.2. Mr. Planner.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the application with respect to 13610 Banks Crescent. It's an OCP amendment from agriculture to high-density residential and a rezone from A1 agriculture to CD8, which is comprehensive development zone. And I just want to, again, note that this is the first time the application is coming to council. And I'll go through the process to date. There is quite an extensive approval process or a consideration process that is required for any bylaw amendment of this nature, and that includes 4 readings that must be passed by council, including a public hearing. So this is the first time that the official process has begun, is tonight. So having said that, the property or the land that is under the application is composed of 5 different properties located east of Bristow Road and Solly Road and west of Banks Crescent. And it is in the bowl that you can see as you drive down Solly Road on your right that looks through to the lake. The application is to construct approximately 380 units of seniors housing with a mixture of market housing, independent and assisted living, and accessory uses that would provide amenities to the residents, visitors, and staff of the facility. With respect to the, first of all, let me go through the process. There will be a number of steps. This is, as I said, the very first step in the process. And to bring you up to speed as to how we got here, the developers first approached staff in the spring of this year, 2016. They presented their idea to council at the end of April in 2016. They then held an open house in May to advise neighbors as to what their concept was, what their vision was. That was held in May at the IOOF Hall. An application for the rezoning was received in May of this year, and that's when staff started to review the process. Letter to the applicant with questions and the studies that we required to adjudicate the idea was sent in June. Information was received from the applicant in response to our letter in both July and August. A letter to the applicant commenting on those submissions were sent also in July and August. Council visited the site on a little bus tour in August to familiarize themselves with the site on the ground. 2 more letters to the applicant sorting out issues were sent in September, and we received information in response to that submission in October. And an Agricultural Advisory Committee meeting was held October 21st. The Advisory Planning Commission meeting was held October 28th. The staff report was developed, and here we are now today with the first official presentation to council. So assuming that the OCP rezoning application goes forward, should that be adopted after the 4 readings and the public hearing, there is a high hazard development permit that must be issued to the site as part of the site falls within the red zone. There is an environmentally sensitive development permit that will be required as the steep slopes surrounding the site are in the environmentally sensitive development permit area. There will be a multifamily development permit required for any site that is zoned for multifamily development. That's a form and character permit. There may be development variance permits depending on the level of servicing that's required in the different locations and surrounding streets. And once all that is through, then they can apply for a building permit. So again, this is the first step in the very first part of this process, which is the OCP and zoning, which essentially is to determine whether a change in land use is warranted for this site. So as you can see on the screen, the site is currently designated as agriculture on the official community plan, essentially surrounded by low-density residential single-family development, with the exception of a park that is located to the north of the site at the top of the bluff. In the official community plan back in 2008, there was a Lower Town strategic plan done that identified the site as potential residential. That was done in 2008 and remained the same through the 2014 amendment. There were no changes made there. Currently, the property is zoned A1 agriculture, And you can see most of the surrounding property, residential property, is zoned RSD1, which is our single-family residential zone. Again, there's a piece of parkland to the north and an area of preservation and protection that represents the trout hatcheries, a water source to the east. In the OCP, there's a number of policies that speak to the high-density residential designation, which is what the application is to amend the official community plan. And it suggests that higher density development should be located along major transportation routes, restricted to areas close to the downtown core or lower town. And the designation is intended to accommodate multi-story apartments and townhouses, offering residents a compact neighborhood with integrated uses and facilities. And densities should be above 60 units per hectare, which is 25 units per acre, and accommodated with a functional site plan and attractive architectural design. So in this particular case, the density that they're proposing is about 59 or 60 units per hectare over the entire site, or about 130 units per hectare if you only consider the development footprint that excludes all of the environmentally sensitive area. Now, the proposed development does not appear directly compatible with the majority of adjoining uses. However, there is a significant separation both vertically and horizontally to integrate the development. The existing topography acts as a significant buffer from surrounding residential uses. Primary objective of the official community plan is to ensure that future residential developments are located where they can be efficiently serviced and linked to the existing infrastructure without the taxpayer needing to contribute capital investment to or operating costs. This particular property is located within the district's urban growth area, which is where additional residential, commercial, and industrial development should be focused. As I mentioned before, a portion of the property is located within the high hazard development permit area, so will require geotechnical oversight before a permit can be issued. A portion of the site is also located in our environmentally sensitive development permit area, so an environmental assessment will have to be done before that permit is issued. That is the site there, and the proposed development footprint is shown on the screen there, and I'll show you some closer images of that in a moment. There are a number of secondary plans in our official community plan that speak to this issue. The first, as I mentioned, is the Lower Town Strategic Plan that suggests this area is identified as the Shaughnessy Springs in Lower Town in the strategic plan. And the area is identified for additional residential development, encouraging increased residential densities. New development must be sensitive to surrounding character of the neighborhood, hazardous conditions, safe access, and address the need for affordable and/or seniors housing. The district has an agricultural plan that describes support for the integrity and stability of the agricultural land reserve, and the plan describes the importance of managing the interface between farm use and non-farm use. And in this particular case, this property is not located in the ALR, and buffering should not be an issue with respect to agriculture, as there are no agricultural lands adjacent to this site. The district has a new cultural plan that identifies Summerland's cultural values and suggests that one of the annotations in that document is that the decisions reflect Summerland's cultural values, and the values are identified as the arts, community character, quality of life, history, heritage, and agriculture. So with respect to this particular proposal, the proposed development doesn't appear to significantly affect the arts or history and heritage within the community. The project will likely have a more significant impact on the neighborhood character rather than the community character as a whole. The addition of 350 new units could add between 500 and 800 residents to the community. Community amenities proposed with the development, which I'll speak to later, will significantly enhance the pedestrian experience in the neighborhood and better connect this area to the downtown core. While an agricultural business will be lost, it is an isolated parcel that would not significantly impact the agricultural nature of our community. Now, with respect to the zoning bylaw, the zone that is being proposed here, which is included in the package, is the comprehensive development zone. And those zones are essentially created where there's a particular use that doesn't fall within one of the district's current zones in the zoning bylaw. In this particular case, the development zone is specific to this development. It permits a seniors housing project comprised of 5 separate buildings, intended approximately 230 units of market housing for seniors, 100 units of independent living, and 50 units of assisted living. The concept is to allow seniors to age in place and move to different sections of the development as they age and require greater levels of care. The development is predominantly 6 stories in height, above 3 levels of underground parking. The living space will be constructed of wood frame over concrete parking structure. As I mentioned, the uses and regulations with respect to the CD8 zone are included in the package. I'm not going to go through all of those unless council requests me to do that. But essentially, the development allows for apartment on lands having full urban services, group home major, which is the care component of the proposal, and secondary uses include childcare facilities, a dining room, recreational services, health services, wellness services, personal services, which include hairdressing, etc. And those uses are only for amenities for the residents, staff, and visitors. They're not intended for the general public as a commercial use. With respect to site considerations, the predominant issue there is the geotechnical hazard, and a preliminary geotechnical report has been submitted, and a more detailed one will be required at the high hazard development permit stage of the development. But the preliminary report confirms the property can be developed for seniors housing and that it is safe to do so. There were a number of drilling test holes done, and a full geotechnical report has been received. With respect to hydrogeological, which is the movement of water under the ground, this was a significant consideration because this property is directly above the water source that feeds the trout hatchery in Trout Creek. So a study was done by a hydrogeological engineer that was submitted with the developer, and it was suggested that the potential flow quantity in Shaughnessy Springs to be negatively impacted by the proposed development is considered to be low. This report was forwarded to the BC Freshwater Fisheries Society, and they had their own hydrogeological firm review the report. That was by MDM Groundwater Consulting. And they have, in their report, commenting on the first report, suggested that there will be no potential impact on the water source with 2 provisions. One, that the development will not either withdraw groundwater, as in drill a well, or disperse water into that underground aquifer. And secondly, that no storm water collected after the project has been constructed or through the construction phase will be dispensed into that water source. So all storm water during construction and following construction has to be piped away from the site, and there are a couple of options to do that. With respect to the ecological values, a preliminary environmental assessment was also prepared and submitted with the development. Again, that is a preliminary one, and essentially the only part of the site that's being disturbed is the vineyard, which is deemed to be lesser environmental sensitivity than the surrounding slopes. And again, a further review will be undertaken with the environmentally sensitive development permit application. With respect to site servicing, the proposed development will be serviced with water, sewer, and electrical. And some upgrades to these utilities will likely be required. However, the extent of upgrading is not known and won't be known until building permit drawings have been prepared and more detailed work is done on the actual buildings. At this point, the developer has proposed a significant amount of study, both architectural, geological, hydrogeological, and site servicing, and it is appropriate to determine whether this land use has merit before we send them off to do any further study. With respect to stormwater, there are 2 options. The first being collect the stormwater and release it into the water source above the fish hatchery. That one has been discounted due to the concerns from the fish hatchery. The second option is to collect and release the stormwater there's two options for that. One is at the storm system in Hill Crescent, and the other is in Gowan Street. And at this point, it appears that dispersing that to the Gowan Street storm system is preferable. With respect to traffic, primary access to the site is down Solly Road, again turning right on Latimer, to Banks Crescent and into the site. Again, a traffic study has been submitted, noting, and I don't know if I'll go into the detail here, but it was counted on a day in July. They've got thresholds there that they don't believe were met, and their traffic engineer is suggesting that an extra 118 trips in the AM peak hour and 142 trips in the PM peak hour are completely can be accommodated on the roads as they are. The report does not speak to Latimer Avenue particularly, and staff are suggesting that the intersection of Solly and Latimer should be upgraded, and the Latimer Avenue from Solly to the development site should also be upgraded. It is noted that the property also has 220 meters of frontage on Bristow Road above the site, which is in this location here, which it doesn't provide access and doesn't particularly impact the site with respect to road. However, it is a frontage that is subject to improvement in the subdivision development bylaw. With respect to fire safety, which has been an issue or been brought up a number of times, the predominant document with respect to fire safety in BC is the BC Building Code. And that has a very thick document that specifically deals in a significant amount with fire safety. So any construction on the site is going to have to satisfy the requirements of the BC Building Code. And in addition to those minimum standards in Summerland, we have a BC Building Code fire life safety bylaw, which has additional fire safety requirements above and beyond what's in the BC Building Code. And where buildings are multiple story, they have to have a room on each floor that has fire equipment in it, so when the fire department gets there, there's equipment for them to use. It is recognized for sure that in a rezoning of this magnitude that will add potentially 380 dwelling units to this neighborhood will impact the limited amenities currently enjoyed by this single-family residential neighborhood. That just shows the contour lines and the geomorphology of the site. I'm trying to catch up here. There's the site plan shown at a larger scale with the 5 buildings located essentially over top of the vineyard that's there now. And there are some images provided that show what the development might look like. Now, the community amenities, again, as I was saying here, the developers recognize that impact is going to be placed on the neighborhood, and they've offered a number of amenities in support of the rezoning application. And these include upgrading Latimer Avenue from the intersection of Solly and Latimer to the development entrance. They include upgrading the intersection at Solly Road and Latimer Avenue. They include constructing a sidewalk from the development site all the way up to connect with the underpass at Highway 97, and a pedestrian walkway in the McDonald Street right-of-way for connecting pedestrian only from Gillespie up to Solly Road. And in addition, there are 5 power poles. They're going to have to relocate. There's a whole pole line going down this right-of-way from Bristow Road down to Lower Town. All those poles are going to have to be removed and the electrical line relocated around the buildings. And they're also considering, as part of that construction, to remove the power poles that are located in this location. So with respect to circulation, staff have been working on this particular application since it first came in May. It has been referred to the Freshwater Fisheries Society of BC with respect to preserving their water source. It has been circulated to the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. It has been circulated to the Interior Health Authority, and their comments have been attached to the staff report. It was presented to the Agricultural Advisory Committee on October the 21st. And this committee discussed the viability of the existing vineyard, And this property is one of the few remaining farms that is a relatively large parcel, approximately 7 acres of farmland. And the AAC recommended that the application not be supported as presented. The application was also presented to the Advisory Planning Commission, meeting held on October the 28th, and there was significantly debated at that meeting. And the Commission ultimately passed a recommendation that the application be supported, subject to support from the BC Freshwater Fisheries Society, as the Planning Commission was significantly concerned about impact with respect to the BC fisheries water source for the fish hatchery. The proposed bylaw amendment also has been forwarded to the Okanagan Lake School District 67 as required by legislation. So with respect to the financial implications, staff have done some work with respect to the financial impact of this development on Summerland. And it's noted that any upgrades to the water, sewer, or drainage facilities will be required as a condition of building permit and have to be installed by the developer to service their development. So there should be no impact on the financial plan related to capital works for those particular funds. That's water, sewer, and drainage. The project will generate approximately $3 million in development cost charges through the DCC bylaw. Property taxation is estimated to increase approximately $200,000 per year for the 3 years of construction, or $600,000 in total. Increases in water user fees, sewer user fees, and electrical user fees have been estimated with respect to the 350 residential units that we were looking at. The estimated increase in water fees is $180,000. Sewer fees are $100,000, and electrical fees retained by the district would be about $120,000. And there is also likely to be significant increase in employment to operate this facility. So that concludes my overview of the presentation, and the developer is in the gallery and has a presentation as well.